So I've already got my pattern cut out here, and what I'm going to do is just basically show you guys how to make your pattern since I've already got mine done. So you want to get the tissue boxes that you're going to use, and I actually have gotten mine in 2 different sizes, but each one, there's some pretty standard sizes. Some of the boxes are a little thicker because they have a little more in them. There's rectangle, there's square. So I mean, you're going to have to make a different pattern for each type of box. And you know, if you plan on giving this to Mom as a Mother's Day gift, I would include a couple of boxes of tissues with it, so that she has the right size. So what I did was, I had a piece of paper, I laid my box down, and I traced it, and you can see here where I traced. And then what I did was, using my ruler, and I actually used my clear ruler so that I could go all the way around, my quilting ruler, but I did about 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around. Probably a little, it's more than 1/4 inch, it's a little more than 1/4 inch, but you want to think of this area that you make after you've traced your box as your seam allowance for these sides too, because however thick you have these, this right here is how thick you need to make your seam allowance. So if you're going to have a pretty thick edge on there, a 1/2 inch seam allowance, you're going to sew these pieces together 1/2 inch, then you want to make a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around this. And you do want it to fit kind of snug, but you want it to go on there fairly easy. So then, you know, I measured my box all the way around, and that's how I got these flaps here. And I also added about a 1/2 inch to each one of the flaps. Once I've got the pattern drawn out, and I've got, I want to cut a piece of interfacing, just one we're going to do for the outside. If you want it to be a nice stiff tissue box cover, you can do interfacing on both fabrics, but I just felt like it was a little too thick, so it's not necessary. So 1 piece of interfacing, and 1 piece of this lovely candy fabric that I got from My Fabric Designs, and then a lining. Okay, so now that you've got your pieces cut out, I do want to mention, if you saw this this little hole in this, I did that by doing a fold one way, fold the other way, mark the hole, and just cut a little square so that I could mark it on the lining fabric, and that way I'll kind of know where the middle is so that I can cut the hole for the opening of the tissue box. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is, with the shiny side of the interfacing, you see here, I want to take that and lay it shiny side up, and then we're going to take the fabric and lay it with the right side facing up, and the wrong side and the shiny side will be together, because the shiny side is where the glue is on the interfacing. So now with the hot iron, I'm just going to put a little bit of water on it just so it won't scorch. And I'm just going to iron over until this is fused together. And you don't want to push the iron into it, you just want to gently, you know. Once we've got the interfacing ironed on, we want to take the outside and the inside part of the tissue box cover, and we're going to fold over about a 1/2 inch. And we're going to do that on all 4 sides of each piece. Now that we've got our end pieces of all 4 sides of the 2 pieces for the cover, we're going to join them together to make them square on all 4 sides. And what you'll do is, you just want to join these where they meet, kind of like, we've got this piece right here, and this is the wrong side of the fabric, this is the right side, and I want to fold this over and meet where that folded part is on each one. I'm going to lay it down and sew it, and I'm going to do that with all 4 sides on both pieces, and then I'll show you how to join those 2 pieces together. So now I've got the 2 pieces here. The first thing I want to do is take the outside piece, and I'm going to turn it right side out. And what you want to do is, just because it's going to make everything look better, go ahead and poke out the corners really well. Make sure they're not inverted, because at this step you might, it's just not gonna look pretty. But what you can do is you fold it where the sides are even. You see the seams are kind of at that point right there, and then press it. So we don't really need to do that with the lining one, because it's gonna, fit right over this one. So that's what you want to do next. With the seams together and right sides facing together, you want to put the lining over the outside. You want to make sure everything meets. All the seams meet. And then you want to start doing some pinning. Okay, so now that I've got that step done, what I want to do is just lay this as flat as I can get it. And I've got my center marks right there on that X. So, actually the first time I did this, I actually fitted it over and I kind of marked the ends of this. And if that's what you want to do, that's great. You can do that. Since I've made this X mark, I can measure the length of this, and that opening is 6 inches by about 2.5, and I don't even think I'm going to do mine quite 2.5 inches wide. But what I'm going to do is, on about the 2.5 mark in the middle, I'm going to make a mark for, I'm going to do 5 inches, just because I don't want to do the 2 inches. At turning, it may actually end up being closer to 6 inches. So I've got the 2.5 mark in the middle where the X is, and then I've marked on the end, and I've marked at the 5. And now I just want to kind of center this at about, I'm going to say 3/4 of an inch. And I'm going to mark there. And then at 1.5 inches, and that makes that even. So now I'm going to draw me a square. A rectangle in this case. I'm going to draw it off. Yep. I like using pencil for this because I don't have anything else that's going to show up on here, and definitely don't want to use marker. But these marks aren't going to show on the they're going to be on the wrong side of the fabric, which is going to be sewn over. So what I'm doing basically, I'm just making this rectangle mark to show where I need to sew. So you see that? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the machine, and I am going to show you guys how to do this because it's kind of tricky. First one I did, I sewed over some of this a little bit and had to unstitch it, rip it out with a seam ripper, and you just have to be very careful. And what you're going to do is sew over this rectangle that you created. You want to sew right on the lines. And I'm actually going to remove my free arm because I feel like it gets in the way a little bit. You just want to feed it through there. And you want to make sure it's flat. This is, like I said, the trickiest part of the whole thing. But I'm going to sew right over my marks that I made. Make sure you do a back stitch because you don't want this part coming unstitched. So there you see, I've got the stitch all the way around my mark. Now what I want to do is I'm going to need to draw a mark to cut it open. And I just kind of freehand draw these triangles. You want to draw a triangle on each of the short ends. You don't draw it on these long ends. You want the corners to, you want it to meet the corner of each one. So, see, I've got one there and one there. Now what I want to do is draw a line from point to point on those triangles. That's just kind of rough drawing, but you want to make sure it's not too badly uneven. Like, you want it to be as much even in the middle here as you can, because if not, it's not going to look right. And this is where one of those handy-dandy seam rippers comes in. Handy-dandy. So what I'm going to do is making sure you're not getting any of this stuff in the back here. You want to grab the fabric, and I'll go ahead and start like on an end here. And just with your seam ripper on that middle line, just rip it up in a little bit. And if you got little scissors like I do, cut all the way to the other point, and then cut the triangles. Don't snip your thread, just snip to the triangle. Now watch the magic happen. What I'm going to do is take this lining piece and I'm going to stuff it in that hole that we made. And this is kind of tricky because it wants to wrinkle up and pucker up, but it can be done. I promise. Meet the corners here. Okay, now I'm not pinning all the way around these pieces because I'm just going to kind of pull it taut with my hands. You don't want to pull it while you're sewing it. You just want to lay it flat and give it that little tug it needs, and make sure that you sew both pieces together. So, and I'm going to start on a corner, and I'm going to very carefully sew all the way around, and just so that you can make sure that both pieces meet. You want to do this pretty slow. Take your time. You want to make sure that both pieces are together. Don't start right on that corner because the needle tends to not want to go over that fabric. And I'm just going to make sure that the pieces are lined up, and I'm going to do about 1/4 inch all the way around seam allowance just to connect the outside and the inside of this piece. So now the true test will be there you go. Look at that. Isn't that adorable? So I think that looks pretty good. What do you guys think? So that is it for my little tissue box cover tutorial. Go on ahead and get you some of this cute fabric at My Fabric Designs and make your mom something sweet for Mother's Day. Peace, y'all. Bye-bye.